Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. In today's video, we're diving into a story that will test the boundaries of love, loyalty, and the quiet sacrifices that often go unnoticed inside a family. This is not just a story about choices, it's about silence, longing, and the hidden cracks in relationships that most people never dare to speak of. And yet, within those cracks, entire lives can change forever. The night was quieter than usual in the suburban town where the Miller family lived. The air carried that peculiar stillness that comes just after sunset when the world slows down but never quite stops. Street lamps cast their golden glow across perfectly aligned houses, each with neatly trimmed lawns and welcoming porches. To any outsider, the town looked serene, safe, ordinary, even predictable. But behind the closed doors of one particular house, emotions stirred in ways that no one on the outside could have guessed. Inside that home lived Caroline Miller, a woman whose entire adult life had been dedicated to holding her family together. Caroline had always been steady, thoughtful, the kind of mother who believed in patience rather than punishment, conversation rather than confrontation. She raised her son with quiet strength, masking her own pain so that his world could feel stable even when hers didn't. Her son Michael had just turned 22. He was in that confusing in-between stage of life, still in college, juggling classes with part-time jobs, trying to find his footing in a world that constantly shifted beneath him. His father, Robert, was often absent. A businessman whose career consumed most of his time, Robert drifted further and further from home with each passing year. He provided financially, yes, but emotionally, he had long since checked out. The marriage between Robert and Carolyn had become something of a performance. They still lived under the same roof, still exchanged polite greetings, still kept up appearances, but their connection had thinned to something almost invisible. They were husband and wife by definition, but in practice, they were strangers who shared a last name. Caroline carried this quietly, as women often do, believing endurance was a form of strength. Michael noticed. Children always notice, even when they pretend not to. He could sense the distance between his parents, though he tried not to get tangled in their silence. And yet it weighed on him too, as unspoken things so often do. One evening, Michael returned home earlier than expected. His shift at work had ended abruptly, and he walked through the front door, dropping his bag by the entryway like he always did. But what he didn't know was that his timing had collided with a private storm inside his mother's heart. Carolyn had been sitting in the living room, staring at her phone. On the screen was an unread message, an ordinary-looking text from someone she hadn't heard from in years. His name was Daniel. To anyone else, it would have seemed harmless, casual. But to Carolyn, it was a door to a part of her past she thought she had buried forever. Her hands trembled as she stared at the words. She hadn't answered yet, though her heart ached with the temptation. Before she could make a choice, she heard the familiar sound of her son's footsteps coming down the hallway. Instinctively, she set the phone face down on the table, hiding the turmoil before he could see it. "Hey, Mom," Michael said softly, his voice carrying the weariness of a long day. "Hi, honey." Caroline replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're home early." "Yeah," he shrugged, loosening the strap of his bag. "My shift got cut short." He studied her face, tilting his head slightly. "You okay?" For a moment, Caroline hesitated. She wanted to say yes, to brush it off like she always did. But the weight pressing on her chest made it difficult. Still, she forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just tired, that's all." But Michael knew her too well. He sat down beside her, his expression gentle but serious. "Mom, you don't look fine. Is it Dad again?" Caroline's throat tightened at the question. She wanted to protect him from the heaviness of her disappointment, yet the truth was impossible to deny. Robert's absence, both physical and emotional, had worn her down. The marriage had become something she endured, not something she cherished. And having her son recognize it made the facade even harder to hold together. She sighed, resting her hand on his arm. Michael, sometimes life doesn't turn out the way we picture it. Your dad and I, we've had our struggles. Michael nodded, his jaw clenching. He hated seeing her sadness. You don't deserve that, Mom. You've done everything for this family. The words caught her off guard, striking deeper than she expected. For just a moment, her eyes filled with tears. She whispered softly, almost instinctively, "Take it easy, son." It was meant to calm him, to stop him from spiraling into anger toward his father. But beneath those words was something heavier. An admission she hadn't spoken aloud. She was barely holding herself together. Days passed. Carolyn found herself unable to stop thinking about that message. Daniel, he had once been an important part of her life before Robert ever entered the picture. Back then, Daniel was kind, attentive, someone who truly listened. Reconnecting with him had seemed innocent at first. But the longer they exchanged messages, the more the conversations warmed. He reminded her of who she used to be before years of distance and disappointment dulled her spirit. Michael began to notice subtle changes. The way his mother's voice softened when she answered the phone, the laughter that slipped from her lips in a way he hadn't heard in years. A brightness returned to her face, one he almost didn't recognize. At first he said nothing. But one evening, he noticed her phone lying unattended on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up and the name Daniel appeared. His chest tightened. "Who's Daniel?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with curiosity. Caroline froze. "He's an old friend." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Old friend, huh? You've been talking to him a lot lately." Her heartbeat quickened. "Michael, it's complicated." "Complicated how?" he pressed, lowering his voice. "Is this something more?" She looked away, guilt pressing down like a weight she couldn't lift. "I felt very alone for a long time, Michael. Your father doesn't see me anymore. Talking to Daniel, it makes me feel alive again." Michael's stomach twisted. The thought of his mother leaning toward another man emotionally shook him. He didn't know whether to protect her, confront her, or beg her to stop. "Mom," he said slowly, choosing his words with care, "I don't want to see you hurt. And I don't want to see our family fall apart either." Carolyn met his eyes, her voice trembling. "I never meant for this to happen. But sometimes, when you're starved for affection, you start looking for it anywhere you can find it." From that night on, Michael carried her secret. He avoided his father, afraid the truth would shatter him. Instead, he tried to be a quiet source of strength for his mother, offering her kindness and patience. Their bond deepened, not because of the secret itself, but because they leaned on each other in ways they never had before. Weeks passed, and Daniel's messages became more insistent. One evening, he suggested they meet in person. Caroline's heart raced. She knew this would be the point of no return. Crossing that line would change everything. She sat in her room one night, staring at the glowing screen, her hands trembling. That was when Michael appeared in the doorway. His voice was quiet, almost pained. "Are you going to see him?" Caroline's breath caught. "I don't know," she whispered. Michael stepped inside, lowering himself into the chair across from her. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with worry. "Mom, whatever you decide, just remember it's not just about you. It's about all of us. About Dad, about me. Please, don't do something you can't take back." Her eyes welled with tears. This time, when she whispered, "Take it easy, son," it wasn't just to calm him. It was to calm herself. Because the truth was, she didn't want to be the kind of woman who destroyed her family. The whisper became her anchor, a reminder to slow down, to breathe, to resist the temptation that threatened to undo everything she had built. In the end, Caroline chose to end her communication with Daniel. The decision wasn't easy. Her heart ached for the warmth he had given her, for the way he made her feel seen again. But deep down, she knew the cost of giving in would be far greater. She wanted to heal what she could, or, at the very least, find peace within herself without tearing her world apart. Michael remained by her side, quietly proud of her strength. Their bond grew stronger, not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because they faced the storm together. Robert, perhaps mercifully, never fully knew how close his marriage had come to breaking. He remained distant, wrapped up in his work, oblivious to the fragile line his wife had nearly crossed. But Carolyn never forgot. She never forgot the night she whispered those words to her son, the night he became her anchor, keeping her from drifting too far into a mistake she could never undo. And sometimes, in the quiet of the night, when she looked at her son and saw the man he was becoming, she realized that the love she had been searching for all along had been right there. Not in romance, not in the arms of someone else, but in the bond she had nurtured with her child. It wasn't the same kind of love she had yearned for, but it was steady, unbreakable, and real. That realization didn't erase her pain or her loneliness, but it gave her something far more valuable: perspective. And sometimes perspective is the only thing that keeps us from losing ourselves completely. Because in the end, life isn't about the moments we almost fall. It's about the choices we make to stand back up. And for Caroline, that choice came in the form of a whispered reminder. Take it easy, son.